Now that your melons have outgrown the garden hothouse, it's time to start checking for blossoms. Blossoms usually appear 6 to 7 weeks after seeding in a garden hothouse, or 4 to 5 weeks after setting out a transplant. Melons have separate male and female flowers. And in order for the fruit to set and grow those delicious melons, pollen needs to be moved from the male flowers to the female flowers. Of course, this is best done by bees. So if you check your melon patch and you see that bees are working the melon flowers, just relax and take it easy. But what do you do if there aren't any bees around? That's happened to me 2 years. I've had to pollinate as many as 100 watermelons by hand. So if there are no bees in your melon patch, you can do the pollinating. To increase your success rate when you're pollinating melons, let's first learn some things about the melon flowers. The male flowers usually appear about a week before the female flowers. Male flowers consist of 5 yellow petals surrounding a small yellow ball-shaped center. Kind of looks like a folded over little yellow brain. On the back of the male flower is a small pea-shaped cup that's holding all the parts together. The female flower looks quite different. The one thing that is the same is, again, you have the 5 yellow petals, but under those petals you're going to see a miniature melon, whether that's a miniature watermelon or miniature cantaloupe or other melon. Now, the top of each female watermelon flower consists of 3 lobes. When you cut a watermelon, you may notice that the fruit is divided into 3 quadrants, just like the female flower is. It's important to know that female flowers only stay open for 2 days, and they must be pollinated in that time frame, or they will not produce a melon. The blossoms will close up and prevent pollination after 2 days. Male flowers produce the pollen that's needed to start the melons growing. The pollen production starts from the time the blossom opens in the morning until about 11 in the morning. Sometimes when it's dry and hot, you will not be able to find any pollen after about 10 o'clock in the morning. You may still see bees flying. Bees will be collecting the nectar, and both the male and female flowers produce nectar. So you may see the bees around and you go to collect pollen, and to your surprise, there isn't any. Now, to take the part of a bee and pick up and transfer the pollen, use a soft watercolor brush. You'll use that brush to remove the pollen from the male flower and then brush it onto the female flower. It transfers very well. So gently put the brush under the ball-shaped center of the male flower and wipe around and upwards to remove the pollen. Sometimes the pollen is shed and is on the petals themselves. Watermelon pollen will appear as a yellow dust on the bristles of your brush. It's very easy to see it. Now take the pollen to the female flower that you want to pollinate and gently wipe that pollen across and around the female flower. You need to repeat this process 3 times to ensure that all 3 lobes of the female flower receive pollen. One male flower may not produce enough pollen to complete the pollination, and you might have to visit other male flowers to find pollen to complete the pollination of the whole flower, making sure you get pollen, as I said, on each of those 3 lobes. Now, on your last pollen transfer, gently wipe your brush around the entire surface of the female flower. This will ensure that you've spread the pollen over the whole flower. If all 3 lobes are not pollinated, The melon may begin to form, but then it likely will die off. Or it will continue to grow and form a misshapen melon, like the one in the photo here. Now, it doesn't take very long for the young melons to start to grow after you pollinated them. In just 3 or 4 days, you're going to see a remarkable difference. If your pollination worked, a young melon will be growing, and the melon will have a bright, glossy surface. Young melons double their weight each week, so the growth will be very noticeable. When you're pollinating cantaloupes, the pollen is more difficult to collect and more difficult to see. You'll need to use a finer watercolor brush. Now, only a small amount of pollen will show on the tip of your brush. It looks like a dusty light brown color on the tip of the brush. Again, follow the 3 pollen transfer rule as per pollinating watermelons to ensure pollination. Now, both the male and female parts are smaller in cantaloupes, though the young blossom at the bottom of the female flower will likely be larger on a cantaloupe or muskmelon type plant. So the miniature melon looks bigger, but the inside of the flower is smaller. Well, hooray, you've successfully pollinated melons now. You may not want to add "have been a bee working melon flowers" on your resume, but now you do have a new skill and have been busy as a bee. In about 6 to 7 weeks after pollinating the flowers, you'll be cutting into one of the most delicious melons you've ever tasted. Well, that's it for pollinating melons. Now you know how. Watch for our upcoming video, How to Tell When a Melon is Ripe, to help you harvest your melons at their peak. And enjoy the fruits of your labor.